back again, and that's a direct impact to youth facilities and other wider community facilities. So politics influences everything in our lives, and where decisions are taken and who takes the decisions and what support these decisions have from people is very, very important and has a direct bearing on our local communities in Fochabers and elsewhere in Moray and elsewhere in Scotland. And again, these issues are very, very relevant to the referendum because, as Angus said, we are the 8th wealthiest country. The 8th wealthiest country. But when you live in a country that's closing its libraries, closing its community centres, jeopardising or questioning the future of our schools in Moray, has our local people in Moray going to food banks, you do not feel like the 8th wealthiest country in the world. So let's take the power for ourselves and then begin to feel like the 8th wealthiest country in the world, because all these issues have a bearing on local community facilities.
To your question, sir, on defence, I'd like to answer that on two different levels. How do we do that for Scotland, and what does that mean for Moray? Because it's very relevant for us here, being a very defence-dependent community. Firstly, one of the big advantages of being a sovereign state is you make decisions over all things, including defence and security. So when somebody comes along and says, oh, we're actively considering 2 out of 3 of the country's air bases, including Lochead, including Kinloss, that was being considered, we all knew that was total idiocy. Every single political party in the Scottish Parliament, including the Conservative Party, opposed it. And it happened anyway. A really good example of somewhere elsewhere, not thinking about what is important when it comes to defence and security in this part of the world. So if we have a government that's able to make defence and security policy, how would we do things differently? Well, first off, we wouldn't put a whole lot of money into the pot, which is currently the case. As taxpayers, we contribute about £3.4 billion a year on defence, but only 1.9 billion of the defence budget is spent in Scotland. Quite apart from the issue of Trident, which is a huge waste of money and does not deter, a huge amount of what we contribute to defence is not spent here. So point one, can we afford to do it? And the answer is absolutely. Defence personnel numbers in Scotland are at a record low. They're only 11,000 now. We've been well advised in the white paper, and it's extremely detailed, and I would encourage you to have a look at it, please. Been very well advised from people within the defence community. The former head of the British Army in Scotland was the lead advisor on it. Budget of £2.5 billion a year, which would fund 15,000 personnel across the 3 services, retaining every single current military facility in Scotland, including Faslane, including Lochead, including Kinloss. What does that mean for us here with both of these bases? Well, if you go from 11,000 to 15,000, it means you have more service personnel. In Scotland, you will also have service personnel who are not rotated between here and Norfolk or further afield. If people are based here, they're based here. That means they're able to put down deeper roots, buy houses, partners work in the local community in a way that works in part here and has always been incredibly important, but we will have even more of that after a yes vote if we go down this route. So in terms of conventional defence, we will have more than is currently the case, and we'll actually have the things that we need. We are a Northern European maritime nation with no maritime patrol aircraft. The Irish Republic has more maritime patrol aircraft than the United Kingdom. But we have Trident submarines, which we spend an absolute fortune on, that don't deter. So the priorities are wrong. We need to work with our neighbours, we need to work with our allies in being safe, supporting the international community where it is legal and sensible. So support the United Nations where it makes sense, but let's not get involved in legal wars, another benefit of being able to make decisions. So for the country, is it a better thing to be able to make defence and security decisions? Yes. Is it a good thing for defence-dependent communities like Moray? Yes. And is a very strong reason for us to vote yes, I think, in the referendum.
An interesting point, actually. We obviously had a meeting in Lochead, and they asked a similar question about defence, and a member of the public actually pointed out that he believes we embarrassed the Westminster government into keeping Lochead open, and that it's actually a ghost compared to what it used to be in its heyday. Just an interesting fact that a member of the public brought forward. So, show of hands again. Obviously we're running out of time. So I want to make sure everyone gets the opportunity to ask a question. We've got a young lady just in the middle there.
Thanks for calling me young. In your paper you talk about the introduction of a point-based immigration system based at particular Scottish needs. Could you kind of clarify that for me?
Yeah.
Okay. And any other question? Anyone that's not spoken, first of all, just to give everybody the opportunity to speak. Nobody else? Okay, gentleman in the yellow shirt.
No more oil, no. It was just back on the question of the military thing and the defence, the assets, the actual aircraft, the personnel. How is that going to be divided up? Because there's not actually a lot of the aircraft which are in one piece anymore.
Yeah.
And will there be a Scottish Army or Scottish Air Force, or how would that be implemented?
Okay.
The existing UK defence.
Some more detail on the defence then.
So firstly on immigration, points-based means that one works out on the basis of priorities, often in the first instance economic. Where are there gaps in skills? Well, first off, in a European Union context, there's free movement of labour, so people want to move that. So we're obviously talking about people outside the EU, and what countries are now doing is that they're making sure that they're trying to fit gaps in the economy or in the public services. So if there are people who wish to come here and work, they can do that. That's what that's all about. That's separate to our human rights obligations. And I think that's quite important, because I want Scotland to be a country that stands for human rights. And so if there is a way in which we can help places where people are in very difficult circumstances, I think we should play our part. And there's been some horrific decisions made in Uganda in the last week, and there are hundreds of people fearful of their lives who are now leaving Uganda, and I would wish that Scotland would be a part, and our External Affairs Minister Hamza Yusuf has already signalled to the British government that we would wish to take people fearing for their lives from Uganda, with the support of the faith community, which has signalled it's very keen to play a part in that. So yeah, points-based means you need to control immigration as well as we can. We are a country that has benefited tremendously from people who have come from elsewhere. I'm one of them, and there are plenty others in the room as well who have that kind of background too. So we're a welcoming country. So, but you do need to manage these things. On defence assets specifically, according to the National Asset Register, UK Defence has about £93 billion worth of defence assets. Some of them are in need of an upgrade, absolutely right. But a conversation would happen about how we deal with the liabilities and the assets, and that includes defence. So obviously all military facilities revert in Scotland to the Scottish Government and Defence Forces in Scotland. And then in terms of the equipment we need, one then goes through the assets to work out what one needs, what one wants, what one doesn't have. So maritime patrol aircraft is an example of something that we don't have. But would we have a share of fast jets? Yes, we would. Would we have a share of transport aircraft? Yes, we would. Would we have a share of helicopters? Incidentally, none of which are based in Scotland. Yes, we would. And we would be able to have these capabilities based here doing the job that makes sense. But this is in conjunction with our friends and neighbours on these islands, point one. Will we continue to operate, to train, to exercise, to work together, to have shared military units if we want? Absolutely, why not? And also our northern European neighbours. We've got challenges in our part of the world that mean that we need to work with our neighbours, and we do need assets which the UK doesn't have, like maritime patrol aircraft, but we also need to have conventional naval ships. Those of you who live near the coast will have seen over Christmas a 65,000-ton Russian aircraft carrier, back for the second time in 2 years. The first time it arrived, the MOD had to radio Scottish fishing vessels to ask what was going on. It's just not serious. So we've got a job to do. We have a share of the assets. It's in the interest of the rest of the United Kingdom that we are able to do it properly, and that's why we will have a sensible grown-up conversation about how we make that happen. And we can do some things a lot better. I, for one, am totally disgusted that we're prepared to hire people on wages less than that of a bus driver, send them to Afghanistan and then give them a P45. That to me is a disgrace. And one of the things that is in the white paper is one of the commitments we would like to make to the defence community is when you sign on for time in the military, you will be able to serve on your time. You will not be shown the door. We need to stand up for our defence community in that way. And we need to look at conditions of service as well. There's a whole lot of ways in which we can make that a lot better than the UK currently does. We've looked at how the Danes do it, how the Norwegians do it. There's a lot of things that we can do if we have the power to do it. And will we be able to guarantee people in the UK Armed Forces at the present time a good career option, a full ranks structure in Scotland, which doesn't exist? If you sign up to any of the 3 services in Scotland, chances are you're going to leave. We want people to be able to serve to the highest command posts in Scotland. We can get the pay and conditions right, and we can structure the defence forces in Scotland for what we actually require. So no longer will we be a maritime nation with no maritime patrol aircraft where people come and visit. We don't even have the boats locally and they have to...
Have to start from scratch?
No, we won't. No. No, we won't have to start from scratch. Why? Because for the reasons already enunciated, the assets are already there. So no, we don't have to start from scratch. Pardon me?
Who says you can keep them?
Well,
the MOD can, and I know from down south, many people say, you go independent, they'll take everything south.
Yeah, well,
and they can operate from 1 or 2 bases.
I'd be happy to forward on the quotes from the current UK Conservative Defence Secretary, who's acknowledged that there will be a sharing of assets. So we're not the greatest fans of one another, but I go back to my point about currency. We must understand the interests of the rest of the United Kingdom as well, and we share an island. So the idea that it is in the interests of the rest of the United Kingdom that Scotland can't properly defend itself doesn't bear scrutiny. The rest of the UK requires and will require that Scotland is able to adequately defend our land, sea and airspace, as do our treaty neighbours. So I for one, I'm not sure where the notion comes that decision makers in England are going to cut off their nose to spite their face. The key thing about all of the things about assets is liabilities. And if people are not going to deal with assets, then there's not a deal on liabilities. And see, some people might suggest not having to carry a huge load of national debt is quite attractive. So let's understand the shared interests, which is that we're grown-ups. We will, with an arrangement about assets, deal with liabilities, and we will carry our fair share of the debt, but also the assets. And it's in our interest that we do that properly as grown-ups.
Okay, so we're just about there. So we've got time for 2 more questions, I think. So can I see a show of hands for anyone that's not asked a question, would like to ask a question, first of all? No? Anyone else got any questions at all?
We'll hang about.
Okay. I have 2 friends. Yeah, let's have them. Gentleman in the yellow shirt, first of all.
Yeah, it's me again. It's the widening today in the UK. There's a huge gap between people who have and people who have not. I know that we need to have a much more just society. There's nothing for young people to look forward to, and whether we like to say it or not, then unemployment is on the way down. It's a nightmare for a young person to try and find a job, and any work that is available is either part-time, very low hours and low pay. I mean, that is only going to lead to a spiral downwards in the general economy, even though huge corporations seem to be having a field day. What's the new Scottish vision on this?
Okay. And the gentleman just behind you there.
Pensions was referred to earlier. For how long can you guarantee you'll at least match the rest of the UK's pensions?
Pensions. Okay, last 2 questions.
The question about inequality goes to the heart of the referendum debate, because this debate should not just be about pounds and pence and getting back to the question about the Church of Scotland's contribution this week. It should be about the kind of society we want to live in and how everyone should feel they've got a stake in the society. No one should feel excluded. It should be an inclusive society. We should share the burden of our challenges but share the benefits of our wealth at the same time in this country. The common weal, of course, is a big theme in the referendum campaign, And I hope, and I know you probably hope, that each and every single Scot or person living in Scotland who's got a vote in this referendum will think about the big picture and the kind of country they want to build in the future, about the possibilities. The great thing about independence is about the possibilities. For instance, in the Scottish Government's white paper, and it's only the Scottish Government's version, we could vote for something different, but we were asked to present our vision for the future. The issue of childcare is central as an illustration of how we could give more people in our society a stake and to allow everyone to make a contribution. And many women, of course, want to go out to work, but because of the benefit system, because of the taxation system, they're unable to do so at the current moment. In Scandinavia, of course, there's much higher female participation in the workforce and much better childcare facilities. The difficulty with devolution, in terms of trying to bring about that equality, is that if women go back into work, the tax they pay goes back to London, and therefore we can't afford to pay for the childcare facilities in Scotland. So it's a catch-22 situation at the moment. The beauty of having taxation powers in your parliament is that you can pay for childcare, bring up to the standards of Scandinavia, treat childcare the same as we do primary education and secondary education and university education, because at the moment it's the odd one out. And then when the women, of course, are back in the workplace and there's female participation, they pay taxes, and that pays for the childcare. And you know, we all share in the wealth and we all pay for the better public services. So equality is something we certainly tackle in Scotland. I think Scotland's an outward-looking nation, and I also think we're a fair nation and we like fairness, and I think that's something about a driving force for a better Scotland if we were independent. Who's the pensions? Sure. Pensions. So we're having an argument who's answering pensions here. The question about pensions, just remind me, it was about whether
it's affordability in the long term.
The affordability of pensions. Okay, the figures at the moment, and I'm sorry to bore on about figures, show that we pay less per head of population towards the welfare state in Scotland than the rest of the UK. Now, one of the reasons I was in a debate last night with the No campaign in Edinburgh, 2 nights ago, and the No campaign's answer to that was, well, you're right about that, but it's because we die earlier. Well, that's actually true, but it's not something we should be proud of in this country, that we pay less towards the welfare state per head of population because people die earlier, therefore take less pension out of the system. So pensions are affordable in Scotland, and you know the evidence is there for that, and indeed it's referred to in the white paper if you're able to access that online or get a copy tonight. Pensions will continue. It doesn't matter where you live, the pension pot you've paid into will continue to pay out to you. Currently the pension system pays out to people living in Spain who've moved to Spain, it pays out to people who've moved to France, elsewhere in the world, they continue to receive their pension. And it so happens we've already got the infrastructure in Scotland for public pensions in particular, because the Public Pensions Agency is based in Scotland, and all public pensions in Scotland are paid from Scotland already in terms of the infrastructure. So a Scottish Treasury will continue to guarantee pensions. Also in the white paper it says that the state pension will have a 3-locked guarantee. It will either be increased by 2.5% per year, or in line with earnings, or index linked, and therefore it will be locked in terms of pension increases. We won't have any more of the insults of people's pensions increasing by 30 pence or 40 pence per year in an independent Scotland.
Okay, well thank you very much everybody for coming along. Some interesting questions. There's some guys at the back who are going to have teas and coffees. I would urge you to hang around, and if you would like to have a chat with any of our panel, they'll be around for a wee while. You'll have a chance to speak. And there's forms on all your chairs. If I could ask you to please fill these in and just leave them with somebody at the back before you go. And I'm sure you'll all join me just in thanking the panel for their questions tonight, and James as well for listening up. Thank you very much.